In our headlines on this Thursday, June 12th, here in South Korea. One day after South Korea turned off its loudspeaker broadcasts directed towards North Korea, the regime proceeds to do the same starting this morning. Meanwhile, the White House says U.S. President Donald Trump remains receptive to future re-engagement with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. And the Trump administration floats around the possibility of an extension in the current halt in reciprocal tariffs for some U.S. trade partners. We start here on the Korean Peninsula. Just one day after Seoul turned off its loudspeaker broadcast directed towards the northern regime, Pyongyang appears to have done the same. Our correspondent Kim Bo-kyung covers this apparent de-escalation in cross-border tensions.
North Korea's first response to the new South Korean administration's move has been to mutually reduce tensions. Pyongyang appears to have paused its broadcasts of loud noises towards South Korea on Thursday, following South Korea's suspension of loudspeaker messages the day before. According to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the South Korean military has not detected any broadcasts since late last night, though it needs to see if the pause will continue.
There are no areas where we can currently hear the broadcast, though it stopped late last night, and there were certainly no broadcasts early this morning or at dawn. It is uncertain whether this will continue in the afternoon. We're keeping a close eye on the situation.
This follows the South Korean military's move to halt loudspeaker broadcasts against the north in border areas the day before, in accordance with President Lee's order.
President Lee Jae-myung recently made this decision as a proactive measure to ease tensions, given the absence of any significant provocations from North Korea. This action is aimed at elevating the military standoff between the two Koreas and opening the way for restoring mutual trust.
The halt came for the first time in a year since the former administration resumed the broadcast last June, for the first time in 6 years, in response to North Korea flying trash-filled balloons across the border. For now, the JC has said there are no changes to scheduled plans to conduct training in border areas. With the first step taken to allay inter-Korean tensions, eyes are on whether this could serve as a momentum for President Lee to push his presidential campaign pledge, reversing the full suspension of the September 19th inter-Korean military agreement. An expert says it won't be easy to do it quickly.
If things develop further, the restoration of inter-Korean communication and liaison channels could pave the way for dialogue. However, I believe there are still many obstacles to fully restoring the September 19 military agreement.
As restoring the agreement is something that cannot be done unilaterally or preemptively, the expert added it should be pushed forward in a planned manner. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The Unification Ministry has reaffirmed its commitment to addressing North Korea's abductions of South Koreans while calling on their families to refrain from activities that may escalate cross-border tensions. A senior official at the ministry highlighted the South Korean government's priority on protecting its people and acknowledged the pain of the families here. The remarks were made after a civic group, including family members of those abducted and detained by North Korea, pledged to continue floating anti-North Korean leaflets across the border. The White House says its leader Donald Trump remains open to dialogue with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil covers these latest comments as well as the broader context behind them.
A relationship once hailed as groundbreaking is back in the headlines. President Trump reportedly sent a letter to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un hoping to revive stalled dialogue. According to NK News on Wednesday, citing a high-level source, multiple in-person delivery attempts to North Korean diplomats at the United Nations were made, but each time they bluntly refused to accept it. Asked about the matter, the White House did not deny the report.
The president remains receptive to correspondence with Kim Jong-un, and he'd like to see the progress that was made at that summit in Singapore. As for specific correspondence, I'll leave that to the president to answer.
Analysts say North Korea's refusal may reflect a deeper dissatisfaction with Washington's unchanged stance toward Pyongyang.
North Korea likely remains deeply skeptical of exchanging personal letters when there's been no real change in what it sees as a hostile U.S. policy. For Kim Jong-un, rejecting Trump's letter also signals that his distrust of Trump still runs deep.
At the same time, Pyongyang appears to be doubling down on its ties with Moscow.
North Korea is gaining significantly from its cooperation with Russia and moving toward a deeper strategic relationship. Engaging in close talks with the U.S. now could send the wrong signal to Moscow. So for Pyongyang, there's little incentive to accept Trump's letter.
Experts say Pyongyang likely hasn't forgotten that some past letter exchanges were made public during Trump's first term, something the North might have viewed as both risky and disrespectful. With Trump's limited time in office, analysts say North Korea is unlikely to engage with the U.S. unless Washington signals a clear policy shift, possibly including sanctions relief or other long-sought concessions. For now, the letter remains unopened, and the future of U.S.-North Korea dialogue is just as sealed. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
A major task of the new administration here is to hammer out a supplementary budget to boost spending and to bolster the economy. So where do we stand? Our business correspondent Kim Do-yeon tells us.
민생 회복과 경제 살리기부터 시작하겠습니다. 불황과 일전을 치른다는 각오로 비상경제 대응 TF를 곧바로 지금 즉시 가동하겠습니다. 국가 재정을 마중물로 삼아 경제의 선순환을 되살리겠습니다.
As President Lee Jae-myung started his term right after winning the election on June 4th, he picked the economy as his #1 priority. He in fact kicked the task force off as his first executive order, has called 2 meetings so far. This comes against a backdrop of South Korea's economy struggling, with the Korea Development Institute labeling the current situation subdued. For the first quarter, the nation's economy shrank. The country's gross domestic product from January to March shrank by 0.2% on quarter, unchanged from an estimate in April. During the second meeting, the first thing he ordered the task force to look into was a supplementary budget. Plus, President Lee has the backing of the parliament, with the ruling Democratic Party holding the majority to pass, with DP lawmakers calling for at least 20 trillion Korean won or $14.5 billion US.
We'll introduce a supplementary budget to ease the burden on people's daily lives and deliver policies that make a real difference. At the same time, we won't stop investing in South Korea's future.
While the specifics are yet to come out, one thing to look out for is the distribution of cash. Lee has been pushing for a universal payment of 250,000 won to everyone. This is something that could help certain industries, especially with hotels and restaurant businesses struggling due to weakened spending.
Providing payments in the form of local currency can help boost the regional economy. So we could see a temporary increase in spending, particularly in sectors like services, lodging, and dining, which may lead to a slight uptick in employment.
Meanwhile, taking on prices is another issue. Universal payments could raise concerns over inflation. On the other hand, the Bank of Korea has actually backed the supplementary budget, and it wouldn't affect the inflation too much. In fact, the BOK says a speedy one is necessary. Another expert also said the supplementary budget needs to focus on the construction sector to support the national economy.
In construction, every 1 billion won in revenue creates around 12 jobs. It's an industry where working-class people, those who rely on labor to make a living, benefit the most.
In addition, there needs to be investments made to make sure industries struggling from U.S. tariffs can survive the hard times. This includes steel and automakers. Plus, sectors like AI need consistent development, and funds could be used to make sure the nation's strategic industry don't lag behind. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the trade front, Korea's ICT exports soared almost 10% on-year in May, and pundits here believe the rise reflects U.S. efforts to secure inventory ahead of a full-blown tariff campaign. Moon Ji-young explains.
Despite the uncertainty surrounding the Trump administration's tariff policy, South Korea's exports in the ICT sector maintained an upward trend last month, driven by robust chip sales. According to data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Thursday, ICT exports in May reached almost $20.9 billion, up 9.6% year-on-year. This marks the best performance for any May since records began. Outbound shipments of semiconductors, the largest export item, surged by more than 21% on year, fueled by strong demand for AI-related chips. This is also a new record high for May. This performance was also driven by the rebound in fixed prices of major products like DRAM and NAND flash chips, as well as continued solid exports of high-value memory such as HBM. While mobile phone shipments increased almost 3% year-on-year, exports of computers and communications equipment rose nearly 2%. However, an expert expressed concerns that this growth may be only temporary.
This is before the full impact of the tariff effects has really kicked in. What we're likely seeing is a move to build up inventory ahead of potential price increases. However, this isn't a normal inventory cycle, and there's a view that once this stock has been accumulated, sales could see a sharp downturn afterwards.
Meanwhile, exports of display panels declined by more than 17%. By country, exports to the U.S. rose more than 7% on year thanks to strong sales of mobile phones, while shipments to Vietnam, the EU, and Japan also climbed. In contrast, exports to China, South Korea's top export destination, fell 6.8% due to a decreased demand for chips. Meanwhile, ICT imports totaled over $11.5 billion, resulting in a positive ICT trade balance. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung spoke with his Vietnamese counterpart Luong Quoc earlier this morning to mark his fifth phone call with a foreign leader since taking the top office. According to presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung, the two leaders agreed to advance cooperation in sectors such as high-speed rail and nuclear energy within the framework of their comprehensive strategic partnership. President Lee Jae-myung, for his part, also called for continued support of Korean businesses in Vietnam, while President Quoc extended a cordial invitation to President Lee to come to Vietnam. The Presidential Secretary for Political Affairs was at the Parliament on this Thursday afternoon to meet with the leaders of two minority parties. Woo Sang-ho paid a courtesy call on Basic Income Party leader Yoon Hae-in before seeking out Social Democratic Party leader Han Chang-min. Now, since this past Tuesday, Woo has been making social calls on the leaderships of political parties, including those of the ruling Democratic Party and the opposition People Power Party, in line with the new administration's efforts to usher in a process of unity and solidarity for state affairs. America's trade partners, including South Korea, now counting down less than 1 month to the end of the pause in reciprocal tariffs come early July, and talk of a possible extension of the tariff relief for some countries has been floated around. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
The U.S. may extend tariff breaks for countries pursuing trade negotiations in good faith. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is leading U.S. trade talks, said in a congressional hearing on Wednesday that the U.S. might extend the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for certain countries. He mentioned that there are 18 important trading partners that the Trump administration is working towards reaching an agreement with. But President Donald Trump also told reporters on Wednesday that while he was willing to extend the 90-day pause, he did not believe that it would be necessary. He also revealed that the U.S. will send trade offer letters to dozens of countries within 2 weeks that they could either accept or decline. The 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs that were announced on April 9th is set to expire on July 9th. This has led South Korea's newly elected administration to prioritize reaching a trade agreement with the U.S., with President Lee Jae-myung expressing a shared commitment to a deal during his first call with President Trump. There are also expectations that the two leaders will continue discussions at next week's G7 summit in Canada. Bessent's remarks come after the U.S. announced that it had reached a framework agreement with China during its second high-level trade talks held in London. Those specific details have yet to be disclosed.
Dozens of countries have engaged the administration thus far with offers to improve their trade relations with the United States. This includes China. I have just returned in the middle of last night from successful negotiations in London with the Chinese delegation.
The Trump administration has so far announced a comprehensive agreement with the UK and a framework deal with China that serves as a stepping stone to eventually negotiate a full-fledged trade agreement. And as it remains a framework deal, Besant acknowledged that negotiations with China are likely to be a lengthy process, signaling that while key issues like Beijing's export controls on rare earths critical to advanced tech and defense were addressed, broader trade disputes remain. But active negotiations, not just with China, but other countries as well, are expected to continue, especially with the U.S. Federal Appeals Court ruling on Tuesday that the tariffs can remain in effect until the court completes its full legal review. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Over in Los Angeles, a 10-hour overnight curfew remains in place in parts of the city for a second night as authorities seek to prevent vandalism and potential violent confrontations amid the presence of National Guard troops and the expected presence of Marines in the city. Pyongyang has the latest.
Following the imposition of a nighttime curfew in key protest areas, the unrest in the City of Angels appears to be somewhat subsiding. LA Mayor Karen Bass ordered an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew in downtown neighborhoods, with AP News reporting a notably quieter night and no visible presence of Marines or the National Guard. The measure, aimed at preventing looting and vandalism, led to over 200 arrests for violating dispersal orders or carrying weapons. Protests have since expanded to at least 24 cities nationwide, with mass arrests reported in New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Denver. California Governor Gavin Newsom has strongly condemned President Trump's military deployment in Los Angeles.
This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk.
The governor has filed a lawsuit and emergency injunction to halt military patrols in LA, with the court hearing set for June 12th.
If court agrees, sanctuary states can refuse federal forces. The administration may appeal to the Supreme Court before the election. Other sanctuary states like New York or Illinois could do the same. At the same time, more conservative states might ask for federal help. So some cities could have troops and others won't.
A nationwide protest called the No Kings Movement is set for Saturday, coinciding with both Trump's birthday and a military parade marking the Army's 250th anniversary. According to AP News, organizers say it could be the largest single-day demonstration since Trump's return to office, with millions expected to rally across all 50 states. Hyun-yeong, Arirang News.
On a light note now, for those of you here in Seoul who have yet to make weekend plans, do consider a visit to an exhibition that shares the works of a renowned British children's author whose stories continue to delight readers of all ages. Our Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
The British author and illustrator Anthony Browne has dedicated his work A Boy, His Dog and the Sea to his late brother. The work illustrates the village where the artist is currently living. Browne has often shown the notion of opposites, such as big and small, by, for example, showing various primates in Big Gorilla, a book of opposites. He has also shared a warm look at the relationship between a grandfather and grandchild through My Granddad. Browne, who is 78, has been illustrating daily life in his new picture books. Anthony Browne leads us step into a world of imagination and warmth for readers through the beautiful picture books with familiar characters and pastel colors.
Hidden clues and whimsical details in his illustrations invite visitors to discover references to famous artwork. The essence of Browne's storytelling is the combination of observation, dialogue, and imagination.
Browne's stories explore a wide range of themes resonating with readers of all ages. Family members can enjoy his original artwork, including his latest unpublished creations.
It was so much fun to see the pictures that I had already seen from his book. It seemed like the characters came to life.
Anthony Browne exhibition, A Master of the Storytelling, will be showcased at Hangaram Art Museum Gallery 3 and 4 of Seoul Arts Center until the end of September. 차윤경, 아리랑 뉴스.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Gaza on Wednesday, at least 41 Palestinians were killed near food aid distribution centers, according to Gaza health officials. Of these, 25 deaths occurred as people gathered near the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site in the Netzarim corridor, where reports say Israeli forces opened fire on those approaching the distribution area. The Israeli military states shots were fired as warning shots at those deemed suspects entering active combat zones. Since mid-May, when the U.S.-backed GHF began operations, over 160 Palestinians have died and more than 1,000 have been injured around its aid zones. The United Nations has condemned the violence and declined to supply aid via the foundation, which uses private contractors with Israeli military backup. Devastating floods have swept through South Africa's Eastern Cape province, killing 50 and leaving many missing. Officials warned the death toll may rise. On Wednesday, at least 49 people were confirmed dead as heavy rain and even rare snowfall struck the region early on Tuesday, overwhelming rivers and causing mudslides around Umtata and surrounding towns. Eastern Cape's provincial premier described the scene as catastrophic, saying as we speak here, other bodies are being discovered and that the numbers are just escalating hour after hour. A school bus was also washed away by floodwaters near Umtata. 6 high school students have been confirmed dead, 3 others rescued from trees, and 4 remain missing. The floods have damaged at least 58 schools and 20 hospitals. Hundreds of families have been left homeless and in temporary shelters. Weather officials warn that the extreme weather patterns could persist for several days, posing an ongoing risk. The United Kingdom and European Union, in collaboration with Spain, reached a political agreement on Wednesday resolving Gibraltar's post-Brexit status. Under the deal, approximately 15,000 daily cross-border commuters will be able to enter Gibraltar using residence permits or national identity cards, eliminating routine passport stamp checks. At Gibraltar's airport and seaport, passengers' passports will be checked jointly by Gibraltar and Spanish authorities. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy stated the agreement protects British sovereignty while boosting Gibraltar's economic stability. Spain and EU leaders welcomed the accord, calling it the removal of Europe's last wall. Brian Wilson, the co-founder and frontman of the rock band The Beach Boys, died on Wednesday at the age of 82. Widely renowned for his genius songwriting, Wilson was known for his landmark tracks, including Good Vibrations, as well as the 1966 album Pet Sounds. Wilson had battered dementia since early 2024, following the death of his wife. Beginning in 1961, the Beach Boys released a series of upbeat songs that celebrated aspects of California's youth culture, including surfing and romance. Tributes have poured in from across the music world, with Bob Dylan and Ringo Starr among those praising Wilson's enduring impact on music and culture. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
I loved it. Yeah.
The rainy season started on Jeju Island today. It's a week earlier than usual. Starting with Jeju Island today, the rain will spread to the Chungcheongdo provinces and the south tomorrow and to the whole country on Saturday. Looking at the expected amount of rainfall, there will be as much as 150 millimeters of heavy rain on Jeju Island and more than 200 millimeters in the mountainous areas. Some areas will have rain pouring at 20 to 40 millimeters per hour at some point. Heavy rain of more than 100 millimeters is expected around the south coast and 5 to 40 millimeters in the Chungcheongdo provinces. Seoul, Daejeon, Daegu, Busan, and Jeju will start off at 19 degrees Celsius. Daily highs will move up to 30 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 25 degrees in Gwangju and Jeju. The rain that covers the whole country on Saturday will continue until Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session.